Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine standing on the edge of, well, an enormous collapsed volcano, looking down into a lake. And the blue.
Yeah.
It's so intense, it just seems impossible. It feels really serene today, almost otherworldly. But this deep calm hides a past born of just unimaginable violence.
And that contrast, between the stillness you see now and the fiery genesis, that's really the core story of Crater Lake National Park. It's a landscape that exists because a mountain basically ceased to be.
Absolutely. And that's our journey for this deep dive. We're heading to Crater Lake in southern Oregon, and our guide is this stack of sources you've shared, research papers, articles, notes, all about this extraordinary place.
Right. Our goal is to really delve into those sources together, pull out the essential knowledge and insights. Think of it as getting the shortcut to being truly well-informed about Crater Lake's dramatic formation, the unique science behind its famous blue, the rich human history tied to the land, the delicate life it supports, how you can best experience it, and importantly, crucial information about what's happening there now and in the coming years.
So buckle up. We're going to uncover the story of a mountain that, well, blew its top and fell into itself. The physics that paint that stunning blue, ancient legends that hold these echoes of geological truth. The fight to protect fragile life, hidden wonders, and some must-know details for planning a visit. And that includes a major upcoming change you absolutely need to be aware of.
Let's start at the beginning then. How did a lake like this even form? It's a story of, well, immense geological power, rooted in the very fabric of the Pacific Northwest.
Right. It begins with the Cascade Range, the volcanic chain that runs right through Oregon.
The Cascades are a classic example of a volcanic arc formed by what geologists call subduction. That's where one of Earth's great tectonic plates, in this case the smaller Juan de Fuca plate, slides beneath another, the North American plate. As it sinks, it melts, generating magma that rises to the surface, building volcanoes over millions of years.
And Mount Mazama, that was one of the biggest of those volcanoes.
Precisely. Mount Mazama started growing, about 500,000 years ago. It was a massive, complex stratovolcano built by layers of lava and ash. And it likely reached an elevation of around 12,000 feet. Pretty big.
12,000 feet?
Yeah. And you can still see remnants of that ancient mountain today. Parts of Mount Scott on the eastern rim. They contain rocks that are about 420,000 years old.
Okay, so it's this huge peak. And then something truly cataclysmic happens. Around 7,700 years ago.
Cataclysmic is absolutely the right word. This was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in North America in the last, say, 500,000 years.
Wow.
Imagine a towering column of ash reaching high into the stratosphere, unleashing something like 50 cubic kilometers of magma and rock.
50 cubic kilometers, that's an almost unbelievable amount of material. Where did it all go?
Well, a significant amount was ejected right into the atmosphere. Ash fell as far away as Alberta, Canada, that's over 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
And closer to the volcano, devastating pyroclastic flows. These are like superheated avalanches of ash, gas, and rock surged down the mountain flanks at incredible speeds, just incinerating everything.
Wow. So with all that material erupted, the ground underneath must have been, well, hollowed out. What happened to the mountain itself?
Exactly. With that vast magma chamber underneath largely emptied, the enormous structure of Mount Mazama was just left unsupported. It began to collapse inwards along a series of ring fractures that circled the summit. So the mountain didn't explode out entirely. It fell into the void it created. And this happened over just a few days.
And that collapsed basin, that's the caldera?
Yes, that's the caldera. It's a huge bowl-shaped depression, about 4,000 feet deep from the rim to the floor, and spanning, 5 to 6 miles across. A lot of the eruptive material actually fell back into this pit and formed a thick layer of rock called intercaldera tuff. It's up to 2 kilometers thick in places.
What's particularly valuable for scientists about Crater Lake's origin? Why is it so important geologically?
Well, what's fascinating is how clearly the story is told in the rocks here. Because it's relatively young compared to many other caldera sites, and there hasn't been significant erosion since. Geologists can essentially read the history of Mount Mazama's life and death like pages in a textbook. The different layers of ash, pumice, solidified lava, the structure of the caldera walls, those clearly visible ring fractures, they provide this just unparalleled record of how these massive volcanoes build up, erupt, and collapse.
But the volcanic activity wasn't entirely finished after the big collapse, was it? I mean, there's Wizard Island?
No, not immediately. There was a period of renewed volcanic activity within the newly formed caldera, even as it began to fill with water. These later eruptions built features like Wizard Island, that beautiful symmetrical cinder cone rising from the lake's surface. Its base actually extends another 70 meters or so below the water.
And there are even more cones hidden underwater. I read about that.
That's right. There's Mariam Cone, which is a substantial volcano rising over 400 meters from the caldera floor. Its peak is still submerged, maybe 200 meters below the surface. And the last significant activity was a smaller lava dome that formed about 5,000 years ago, also underwater, east of Wizard Island. These features line up with those original ring fractures, showing that continued connection to the deeper volcanic plumbing system.
So you have this enormous deep bowl, and then the rain and snow start accumulating. How long did it take for it to, fill up and become Crater Lake?
The geological evidence suggests it filled relatively quickly, perhaps within about 300 years to reach roughly its current level. We know from radiocarbon dating that water was covering the central platform within about 150 years of the collapse. After that last bit of activity around 5,000 years ago, the volcano went into a state of quiescence, meaning it's essentially dormant now. Land age today is primarily shaped by slower processes like mass wasting, which is basically just the gradual downhill movement of rock and soil from the caldera walls due to gravity and erosion.
Thinking about that origin story, a mountain dissolving into the earth in days, then rain and snow creating this incredibly deep lake. It feels less like geology and more like, I don't know, a myth or just raw power. Imagine witnessing that unfold. How would it shape your understanding of the world around you?
It certainly puts the scale of geological time and Earth's power into profound perspective. And that dramatic birth created the perfect conditions for the unique phenomenon that defines the park today, the water itself.
Ah, the science of the blue. Let's dive into the facts about the lake as it is now. It's famous for being the deepest lake in the U.S., right?
That's correct. According to the National Park Service, it's 1,943 feet deep, though some USGS measurements put it slightly deeper, 1,949 feet. Either way, incredibly deep. It covered about 21 square miles, nestled within that caldera rim that's up to 6 miles across.
And its water source is really unusual, isn't it? Like completely isolated.
It's incredibly unique, and that's key to its purity. Crater Lake is sourced almost entirely from direct precipitation rain and, even more significantly, the massive amounts of snowfall the park receives, averages 42 feet a year. And crucially, it's a closed basin. There are no rivers or streams flowing into it and none flowing out. The water level is maintained purely by the balance of precipitation, evaporation, and maybe a bit of subsurface seepage.
That isolation must be why the water is so incredibly pure.
Precisely. And that purity leads directly to its world-renowned clarity. The average Secchi disk visibility, that's how deep you can lower a white disk and still see it, is usually between 98 and 103 feet. The record measurement reached an astonishing 142 feet.
It reminds me of that old story, lowering a white dinner plate back in 1896 to measure clarity. Simple method, but it tells you something.
It really gives you a sense of just how clear this water is. This exceptional clarity exists because the lake has extremely low levels of suspended particles, dissolved minerals, and very few nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. Low nutrients mean very little algae growth, which is what typically clouds up lakes. This level of purity is just incredibly rare for a large lake.
Okay, so it's pure and clear, but why does that make it blue? Not just clear, but that intense, vivid blue.
Ah, that mesmerizing color. It's a matter of physics and light.
Yeah.
When sunlight penetrates very pure, very deep water, the water molecules themselves absorb the longer wavelengths of light, the reds, oranges, yellows, and greens. But the shorter wavelengths, the blues and violets, they get scattered back towards your eye in all directions, like tiny mirrors.
Ah, so the deeper and purer the water, the more light it can absorb overall, and the more effectively it scatters that blue light back out.
Exactly. Deep, clear water maximizes this scattering effect, which is why the dominant color you see is that intense blue. You might notice slightly greener hues in shallower areas where the light interaction is a bit different. The atmosphere also plays a subtle role,
Isn't it incredible how the raw geology of the collapse created this deep basin? And then the simple physics of light interacting with incredibly pure water creates that specific, breathtaking blue. It's like a scientific marvel made visible.
It truly is a powerful combination. And that makes Crater Lake not just a beautiful place, but an invaluable living laboratory. Its pristine condition provides a vital reference point for scientists monitoring environmental changes elsewhere. It allows them to see what a truly healthy, undisturbed aquatic system actually looks like.
Moving from the science to the human story, this land was sacred long before anyone was lowering dinner plates into it.
Absolutely. Archaeological evidence tells us humans were present in this area even before the eruption of Mount Mazama over 7,700 years ago. We know this because artifacts have been found buried beneath the ash layers from that eruption. The area was part of vast ancestral lands, likely used for temporary camps.
And for Native American tribes, particularly the Macalax or Klamath people, the connection is incredibly deep, isn't it?
It is. Crater Lake is central to their spiritual beliefs. They called it Giwas, which means deep blue water. It was a sacred, powerful site, approached with reverence and used for things like vision quests and prayer.
And they have a powerful legend about the lake's formation, one that has these really striking parallels to the scientific account we just discussed.
Yes, the legend of the battle between Lao, the spirit of the below world who lived in Mount Mazama, and Skell, the chief of the above world, associated with Mount Shasta. Their epic conflict involved fiery eruptions, the sacrifice of holy men, Skell's eventual victory, and then Lao's collapse into the mountain. The pit then filled with rain. It's a profound narrative that strongly aligns with the geological sequence. The eruption, the mountains collapse into a caldera. It really suggests the Klamath people held an oral history of this immense event.
That's such a powerful link between ancient storytelling and modern science. It makes complete sense, then, that given its sacredness, the Klamath people were reluctant to share the lake's location with early European settlers.
Understandably so. It wasn't a place for casual discovery or resource extraction. It was a deeply spiritual heartland.
Which brings us to the first documented sighting by European Americans.
That was John Wesley Hillman, part of a group of gold prospectors, on June 12, 1853. He reportedly called it the bluest lake he'd ever seen, initially naming it Deep Blue Lake. But, because they didn't find gold, the discovery didn't really lead anywhere and kind of faded from public awareness.
Until it was essentially rediscovered in 1862 by Chauncey Nye's party, who called it Blue Lake and published the first description.
Yeah, those early encounters, really driven by the search for resources, they stand in pretty stark contrast to the Native American reverence, don't they?
But the push to preserve this place eventually took hold, largely thanks to one incredibly determined individual.
William Gladstone Steele. His dedication is truly inspiring. He first read about the lake way back in 1870 in Kansas. Get this. The article was wrapped around his lunch.
Chuckles lately, wrapped around his lunch. That's got to be one of the most unexpected ways to discover your life's passion.
Right. It just stuck with him. And when he finally stood on the rim in 1885, he was so profoundly moved by its beauty and uniqueness that he vowed right then to make it a national park.
And he didn't give up easily. That was a 17-year crusade.
17 years of just tireless work. He wrote articles, he lobbied politicians, he worked to educate the public. He even assisted with the first systematic survey of the lake back in 1886, which is when they confirmed its incredible depth. He faced opposition, from people like sheep herders and miners who wanted to use the land differently. But he found powerful allies in the growing conservation movement of the time.
He managed to get some partial protection in 1893 as a forest reserve, but he kept pushing for full park status.
His persistence finally paid off. On May 22, 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt signed the bill into law, establishing Crater Lake National Park, Oregon's first and still only national park. It's just a remarkable example of how one individual's passion and persistence, combined with collaboration, can lead to lasting preservation.
How does knowing the ancient legends and the intense personal fight for its preservation change how you view the lake today? It's not just a beautiful scenic overlook. It has these deep layers of human connection, reverence, and sheer determination embedded in its history.
It absolutely makes the landscape resonate so much more powerfully. It's a place that has inspired awe and prompted significant action across different cultures and centuries.
Okay, let's explore the life that calls this caldera and the surrounding landscape home. It's a truly unique ecosystem, isn't it?
Starting with the lake itself, yeah. Despite its purity, it supports a specialized aquatic community. We find over 165 species of phytoplankton, these tiny plants, and 11 species of zooplankton, tiny animals that form the base of the food web. And that incredible clarity allows photosynthesis to occur unusually deep, down to maybe 40-80 meters.
And there's actual moss growing way down there in the deep, cold water.
Yes, a native aquatic moss, mainly from the genus Fontinalis, forms these dense carpets along the caldera walls, usually between 100 and 400 feet deep. It's adapted to that really low-light environment.
No, correct me if I'm wrong, but the fish, they aren't originally from the lake, are they?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Crater Lake was naturally fishless, until they were introduced between 1888 and 1942, primarily for recreational fishing. Today, two species have self-sustaining populations, rainbow trout and kokanee salmon, which are landlocked sockeye salmon.
Yeah.
There are currently estimated to be around 60,000 fish in the lake.
And introducing fish into a naturally fishless system, I mean, that must have had impacts, right?
It significantly altered the original ecosystem, and that change is directly related to a critical conservation challenge the park faces today, particularly concerning one incredibly unique resident.
Which brings us to the Mazama newt.
One of the park's most vulnerable treasures, Mazama newt Taricha granulosa mazami. It's an endemic subspecies found only within the caldera. It evolved here without the typical predators its relatives face outside the park, and as a result, it lacks the potent toxins that make other newts poisonous.
Which makes it very vulnerable to new threats, I imagine.
Extremely vulnerable. And its greatest current threat is an invasive species, the signal crayfish.
And the irony is, didn't they introduce the crayfish back in 1915, supposedly as a food source for those non-native fish?
The historical context is stark, isn't it? It just highlights the unintended consequences of altering an ecosystem. The signal crayfish population has exploded. They now occupy over 95% of the shoreline habitat within the lake. That's up from 50% in just 2008.
And they prey directly on the newts.
They do. They prey on adult newts, the larvae, the eggs, and they also compete for the same food sources like aquatic invertebrates. This predation and competition has had a just devastating impact on the newt population.
How bad is it? I saw some really alarming numbers in the research.
It's critical. Researchers counted only 35 newts in the entire lake in 2023.
35.
And this year, the count plummeted even further to just 13 individuals. They are facing an imminent risk of extinction.
13. That is just incredibly difficult to hear. What does that number tell us about the immediate future for the species? And what are the most urgent actions being taken?
It tells us they are teetering on the very brink. The immediate focus is securing Endangered Species Act protection, which is currently being pursued through legal action. The park and its partners are exploring potential strategies like intensive targeted crayfish removal in key newt habitat areas and the complex possibility of a captive breeding program to try and create a safeguard population.
So the Mazama newt really is like a canary in the coal mine for the health of the whole lake ecosystem.
It absolutely is. Their drastic decline highlights the extreme sensitivity of this unique, isolated ecosystem to invasive species, and it potentially signals broader vulnerabilities, perhaps even linked to climate change, as warmer water temperatures might actually favor the crayfish.
Beyond the lake itself, the park encompasses over 180,000 acres. What's happening ecologically in the surrounding terrestrial areas?
Oh, the park contains beautiful old-growth conifer forests and high-elevation meadows. The plant life is diverse, with different species of firs, pines, hemlocks, cedar, depending on elevation and precipitation. In summer and early fall, the wildflowers are just spectacular, including species like Applegate's paintbrush and the Washington lily.
And what animals might you see if you're hiking around?
While commonly seen animals include golden-mantled ground squirrels and Canada jays, sometimes called camp robbers for their boldness around visitors, you might see black bears, especially in spring and fall. In winter, you can often see tracks of animals like martens or snowshoe hares. Clark's nutcrackers are really important for dispersing the seeds of certain pines. The park is home to over 70 mammal species, including species identified in Oregon's conservation strategy, like the Pacific, marten, and pika.
Managing these complex ecosystems must come with ongoing challenges beyond the newt crisis.
Significant ones, yes. Besides the critical issue with the signal crayfish in the lake, there's active management of invasive plants like Dyer's woad and thistles on land. That's why you'll see those boot brush stations at trailheads. It's a simple way visitors like you can help prevent the spread of invasive plant seeds.
And climate change is a growing factor in management, too.
It's an increasing concern, yeah, particularly regarding potential impacts on lake temperature, favoring invasives and stressing native species. The park's long-term monitoring programs tracking water and air quality, ecosystem health are crucial for understanding these changes and developing adaptation strategies. Crater Lake is actually recognized as an Oregon Conservation Strategy Opportunity Area, with recommendations for enhancing sensitive areas like wetlands and meadows to build resilience.
Is the park also looking at formal wilderness designation for parts of the area? I saw that mention.
Yes, advocacy is ongoing for formal wilderness status in certain areas. Designating land as wilderness provides the highest level of legal protection, which would offer even stronger, more lasting safeguards for those unique and sensitive ecosystems against future development or certain types of use.
It's clear that even in a protected national park, preserving the ecosystem is an active, ongoing effort, constantly facing new threats and challenges. How does the story of the Mazama newt, fighting for survival in a place we consider pristine, change your perspective on what protecting a national park truly entails?
It definitely shifts the focus from just setting boundaries to understanding and actively managing complex, interconnected systems. Pristine isn't really a static state. It requires constant vigilance and informed intervention.
Okay, let's switch gears to experiencing this incredible place firsthand. The most iconic way to see Crater Lake is obviously the Rim Drive.
Absolutely. The historic 33-mile rim drive encircles the caldera, providing these breathtaking, unparalleled views from dozens of overlooks. It's typically fully open from early July through late October, depending heavily on snow conditions, of course. The road was actually designed to blend with the natural landscape, offering access to over 30 overlooks, various trailheads, and picnic areas.
Are there a few must-see overlooks along the way, ones you absolutely shouldn't miss?
Definitely. Discovery Point is near where Hillman first saw the lake. Watchman Overlook is popular for incredible views of Wizard Island and stunning sunsets. Cloud Cap Overlook is actually the highest paved road in Oregon, offering these really expansive panoramic views across the entire park.
And you can see the distinct features like Pumice Castle and Phantom Ship from overlooks specifically named for them.
Yes. Pumice Castle Overlook gives you a great view of that vibrant, orange, eroded pumice formation. And Phantom Ship Overlook is the best spot to view that dramatic island rock formation that looks kind of like a sailing ship. Sinnott Memorial Overlook provides that classic, framed view of the lake from near Rim Village. Always a good stop.
Beyond just driving, there are over 90 miles of trails in the park. Hiking seems like a major activity.
Hiking is a fantastic way to immerse yourself, but there's one specific trail that is absolutely crucial to understand for planning a visit, particularly in the next few years.
That would be the Cleetwood Cove Trail, I'm guessing.
Yes, the Cleetwood Cove Trail. It is the only legal trail that descends all the way down to the lake shore. It's a demanding hike, 1.1 miles one way, dropping 700 feet. So remember that steep descent is your ascent back out. This is the access point for the boat tours and the only place where you are legally allowed to swim or fish from the shore within the caldera.
And this trail is scheduled for a major multi-year rehabilitation project, right? This is the big update.
It is, and this is critical information for anyone planning a trip from 2026 onwards. We'll detail the project and its specific impacts in a bit, but be aware that access via this trail is changing significantly and soon.
Okay. What about other popular hikes from the Rim?
Well, Garfield Peak Trail is strenuous, 3.6 miles round trip, climbing over 1,000 feet. But you're rewarded with stunning panoramic lake views, including Wizard Island and Phantom Ship. Mount Scott Trail is even more strenuous, leading you to the park's highest point at 8,929 feet. It's the only spot where you can see the entire lake in one view. Challenging, but very rewarding climb.
Watchman Peak Trail sounds more moderate, shorter at 1.6 miles round trip, and very popular for its historic fire lookout and 360-degree views, especially for sunset over Wizard Island. Can get quite crowded, though.
It can, yeah. For easier options, Discovery Point Trail offers West Rim views through old-growth forest. And the Plaquenil Falls Trail is a gentle 2-mile forest walk to a lovely waterfall, often with wildflowers. The Pinnacles Trail is also an easy short walk to see those unique volcanic spires we talked about.
And if you take a boat tour out to Wizard Island when they're running, you can hike there too.
Yes, the Wizard Island Summit Trail is a moderate hike from the dock. It takes you up to the rim of the Cinder Cone Zone crater. It offers a really unique perspective, seeing the larger caldera from within.
The popularity of trails like Cleetwood Cove and Watchman Peak really highlights the park's challenge, doesn't it? Balancing heavy visitor use with preserving the landscape. The need for that major project at Cleetwood is a direct consequence of years of use and just the dynamic environment.
Absolutely. High traffic on trails causes erosion and wear. And in a place like Crater Lake, with steep caldera walls and volcanic soil, maintaining safe and sustainable access requires significant and sometimes disruptive work.
Speaking of Wizard Island, boat tours are the primary way to access it.
Yes, they're the only way to reach the island. Boat tours typically operate from late June through mid-September, departing from the Cleetwood Cove dock. They provide narrated tours of the lake's geology and features, and they're the drop-off point for those wanting to hike or spend time on Wizard Island itself.
And just to reiterate, because this is so important, these boat tours and access to Wizard Island will be suspended during that multi-year Cleetwood project.
That is correct. Access to Cleetwood Cove, and thus the boat tours and Wizard Island, will not be available during the project construction seasons. We'll give those dates again shortly.
Are there other ways to experience the park besides hiking and driving yourself? Maybe something less strenuous?
Sure. The Crater Lake Trolley offers a relaxing, narrated 2-hour tour of Rim Drive, stopping at key overlooks. It's a great option to relax and learn without having to navigate the drive yourself. Ranger-led programs, too. They're offered at visitor centers and overlooks, cover various topics like geology, ecology, history. They're excellent for gaining deeper insights.
And the park is open in winter, offering a completely different kind of experience.
Oh, a beautiful snow-covered experience. Winter is ideal for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. While most roads are closed, the south and west entrances are usually kept open to Rim Village, providing access for winter activities. Just be prepared for significant snow and ensure you have appropriate traction devices for your vehicle.
You can also bike Rim Drive, though it sounds challenging with car traffic unless you participate in the annual Ride the Rim event when it's close to vehicles.
Yeah, that's the best time for biking it. So exploring the Rim or venturing onto trails in any season offers so many distinct ways to connect with the park's beauty and story. From the grand vistas to quiet forest paths or the intimate experience at the lake's edge, when accessible.
Let's talk about some of Crater Lake's lesser-known marvels, maybe things off the main path or just unexpected details.
Well, one of the most persistent and charming mysteries has to be the Old Man of the Lake.
Ah, the log. The one that flits vertically.
It's a 30-foot hemlock log that has been observed floating upright in the lake since at least 1896. About 4 feet of it protrudes above the surface, and it's surprisingly buoyant. Sometimes it even supports the weight of birds landing on it. Carbon dating shows the tree itself is over 450 years old.
And he actually travels around the lake. He doesn't stay put.
He does. He's been tracked moving significant distances. Back in 1938, he traveled over 62 miles in just 3 months. His vertical orientation is still debated. Theories involve, denser waterlogged wood at one end, or maybe rocks originally embedded in the roots acting as ballast. What's also unique is that deepwater moss, Fontinalis, actually grows on the submerged portion of the log, which is pretty unusual.
There's a touch of folklore mixed with the science there, isn't there? About not disturbing him.
Oh, yes. There's a story about researchers in 1988 who tied him up briefly to study him, and apparently bad weather persisted until they untied him. It definitely adds to his enigmatic reputation. He's a wonderful blend of natural curiosity and local legend.
Beyond the famous Rim viewpoints, are there hidden gems accessible to visitors? Places may be less crowded.
Absolutely. If you take Pinnacles Road, which branches off the Rim Drive on the southeastern side, you can access some lesser-known but beautiful spots. Plaquemine Falls, for example. It's an easy 2-mile round-trip forest hike to a lovely waterfall. Offers a quieter experience away from the main Rim crowds. The trail was built relatively recently, in 2011.
And the pinnacles themselves, the spiky formations, what are they exactly?
Yeah, they're quite extraordinary, sometimes called fossil fumaroles. They're tall, slender spires, some reaching up to 100 feet high, formed from cemented volcanic ash. They're basically remnants of ancient stream valleys where hot volcanic gases vented up through the thick ash from the eruption, hardening it. As the softer surrounding ash eroded away over thousands of years, these harder spires were left standing like sentinels. There's an easy, short, 0.8-mile trail that takes you to a viewpoint.
And for nighttime wonders, Crater Lake is a famous dark sky location, isn't it?
It's recognized as one of the top 10 dark sky locations within the National Park Service system. Its high elevation and lack of light pollution make it just incredible for stargazing. On a clear, moonless night, the Milky Way is vividly visible to the naked eye.
Are there specific spots that are good for stargazing?
Discovery Point often hosts ranger-led astronomy programs, so that's a good bet. The Sinnott Memorial Overlook and the area around the Rim Village Visitor Center are also great accessible spots with really expansive sky views.
And you might even see the northern lights sometimes. Aurora Borealis.
It is possible, yeah, particularly during periods of high solar activity and ideally in the winter months when the nights are long and clear. Crater Lake's dark skies provide the perfect backdrop for witnessing the aurora if conditions are just right. Check the forecast, of course.
For those seeking more solitude, are there truly wilderness areas that are less visited, maybe longer hikes?
Yes, the park has significant backcountry areas requiring permits. But for something more accessible, yet still less crowded. Trails like Boundary Springs are just outside the western boundary. It's a moderate 5-mile round-trip hike to the headwaters of the Rogue River, importantly showing that the Rogue starts outside the caldera, not from the lake itself. Castle Crest Wildflower Garden near park headquarters is a short, easy loop that is just bursting with wildflowers in summer and a lovely spring-fed meadow. Fighty Falls is an easy-to-access roadside waterfall on the East Rim Drive, and Grayback Road is an unpaved section of the Old Rim Drive, about 8 miles round trip, that's great for hiking, biking, or birding, and it's one of the few areas where pets are allowed on the trail.
It sounds like going beyond the obvious viewpoints can reveal a whole other layer of wonder and quiet beauty. What quiet marvel or hidden story will you seek out on your visit?
Exploring these lesser-known areas truly deepens the connection to the park. It shows it's far more than just the famous blue circle.
Let's shift now to the future and how this national treasure is protected and managed. What is the core guiding vision for Crater Lake National Park? What's its official purpose?
Well, the park's fundamental purpose, as outlined way back in its 1902 legislation, is basically twofold. First, to preserve the lake's unique characteristics, the surrounding landscapes, its dramatic volcanism, and its rich cultural heritage. And second, at the same time, it's tasked with fostering public understanding and enjoyment through education and inspiration.
And certain aspects of the park are recognized as particularly significant, guiding those efforts.
Yes, the park has defined significant statements. These highlight what makes it nationally and internationally important. Things like the lake's exceptional purity and depth, the spectacular scenery, the relatively intact ecosystems, its deep significance to Native Americans, its value as a premier scientific laboratory for studying caldera systems and pristine aquatic environments, and the profound opportunities it provides for visitor connection and inspiration. These are broken down further into specific fundamental resources and values that guide day-to-day management decisions.
How does the park plan for the long term? Is there a master plan?
The primary guiding document is the 2005 General Management Plan, GMP. It replaced a much older plan from 1977. This GMP sets the long-term vision. It emphasizes goals like increasing recreation diversity, enhancing research and education, and continuing robust preservation efforts. The 2015 Foundation document reinforces these core principles.
Conservation and research are clearly ongoing efforts, as we saw so vividly with the Mazama Newt situation.
Critically so. The plight of the Mazama Newt is a major focus right now. Efforts are underway to secure federal ESA protection, and they're actively exploring potential strategies like intensive localized crayfish removal and that complex option of a captive breeding program to try and save the species. Research is constantly informing these urgent efforts.
And invasive species management isn't limited to the lake, right? You mentioned plants earlier.
No, control of invasive plants like dyer's woad, thistles, and knapweed is an ongoing challenge across the terrestrial landscape. The park has a plan in place, and simple things like those boot brush stations are really important tools for visitor prevention. But the signal crayfish remains the most significant aquatic invasive threat by far.
And climate change is also a growing factor in park management considerations.
It absolutely is. There's increasing focus on how climate change will impact the park, particularly concerns about rising lake temperatures, potentially favoring the invasive crayfish and stressing native cold water species. The park's long-term monitoring of environmental conditions provides crucial data for developing adaptation strategies. As mentioned, Crater Lake is an Oregon Conservation Strategy Opportunity Area, highlighting where things like wetland and meadow enhancement could help bolster ecosystem resilience.
You also mentioned earlier that advocacy is ongoing for formal wilderness designation in certain areas of the park.
Yes, that effort is part of the broader conservation strategy. Pursuing formal wilderness designation for specific areas provides the highest level of federal protection. It safeguards those lands against development and certain uses that could impact their natural state, offering a stronger, more lasting layer of preservation for the future.
Now let's talk about that crucial update we've referenced a few times, the Cleetwood Cove Trail and Marina Rehabilitation Project. This is absolutely vital information for anyone planning a visit in the near future.
It is. This project is necessary because the existing trail, which gets very heavy use, has significant deterioration. We're talking erosion, failing retaining walls, rockfall hazards. Plus, the previous boat dock system failed back in 2016, and the lakeshore restrooms are really outdated and inadequate for the number of visitors.
What does the project actually involve? What are they rebuilding?
It's a comprehensive rehabilitation. It includes rock scaling on the cliffs above to improve safety, a full reconstruction of the trail itself, installation of a new, stable, floating dock and pier system, construction of new modern restrooms down at the lakeshore, and a new ticket booth structure. Complete overhaul, really.
And this means the trail and lake access will be impacted significantly.
Yes, it will require significant multi-year closures. The contract is expected to be awarded in late 2025. And due to the very short, high-elevation construction season at Crater Lake, the work itself will take place over 3 full summer seasons.
3 summers. Which years are we talking about?
The construction summers are currently scheduled for 2026, 2027, and 2028.
So during the peak visitor season, the summers of 2026, 2027, and 2028, what exactly does that mean for visitors wanting to get down to the lake?
During those 3 construction summers, the Cleetwood Cove Trail, its associated parking area, and the entire lakeshore area at Cleetwood Cove will be completely closed to the public. This is extremely important. There will be no public boat tours on the lake, no swimming or fishing from the shore at Cleetwood Cove, and no access to Wizard Island during the summers of 2026, 2027, and 2028.
Wow. So the earliest anticipated reopening for lake-level access via Cleetwood Cove would be summer 2029.
That is the current projection, yes, assuming everything goes according to plan.
This means that summer 2025 is the last opportunity for several years to experience lake-level access, boat tours, and Wizard Island via Cleetwood Cove. That's a major heads-up for planning.
That is correct. However, it's really crucial to emphasize that while Cleetwood Cove will be closed during those summers, the rest of Crater Lake National Park will remain open. Rim Drive, all the other trails, all the overlooks, the visitor centers, they will still be accessible and open for visitors to experience the park from the rim and surrounding areas.
This project, and others planned, points to a significant challenge facing the park. Aging infrastructure, right? Deferred maintenance.
Like many national parks, yeah.
Yeah.
Crater Lake has a substantial backlog of deferred maintenance and repairs, estimated at around $240 million. The largest needs are on paved roads like Rim Drive and its pullouts, but also on buildings. And the short operating season and harsh winters make maintaining infrastructure particularly difficult and expensive here.
But there are investments being made to address some of these needs, beyond Cleetwood.
Yes. Funding from sources like the Great American Outdoors Act and the Federal Lands Transportation Program is supporting planned projects. These include rehabilitating historic structures, repairing bridges like those over Annie Creek, resurfacing campground roads, and upgrading visitor centers and maintenance facilities. There are also longer-term plans for further work on East Rim Drive and ongoing trail management plan implementation, accessibility improvements. It's a constant process.
It's clear that these projects, even with the temporary disruption at Cleetwood Cove, are absolutely vital for preserving the park's resources and ensuring safe, sustainable visitor access for the long term.
They're essential investments in the park's future, allowing it to continue to inspire visitors and protect its unique resources for generations to come.
How do these challenges of maintenance, funding, and conservation projects change your perception of what protecting a national park truly entails? It seems like it's much more active and complex than just setting aside land.
It really highlights the continuous effort required, doesn't it? Preservation isn't a one-time act. It's ongoing stewardship, adaptation, and necessary investment to keep these places healthy and accessible for everyone.
Okay, let's bring it all together with the practical side, planning your own unforgettable journey to Crater Lake.
Knowing the timing is crucial, given the seasonal nature of the park. Summer, typically July through mid-September, is peak season. You'll have the best chance of good weather, all roads and facilities are usually open, and it's the prime time for hiking and wildflower viewing. The trade-off, of course, is larger crowds.
What about the shoulder seasons, spring and fall?
May and June can be beautiful, but variable. Snowfall can still impact road openings, especially Rim Drive. It's definitely less crowded than summer. Late September and October offer beautiful fall colors and milder weather than peak summer. But temperatures cool down, and facilities and roads start closing in late October or early November.
And winter is a completely different park experience altogether.
A truly beautiful snowy experience from November through April. But you have to be prepared for significant snow. The park averages 40-50 feet annually. Most roads are closed, but the south and west entrances via Highway 62 are usually plowed to Rim Village, offering access for snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, and real solitude. Crucially, you absolutely need to carry and potentially use tire chains or other traction devices in winter snow zones. They will enforce this.
Getting there and around requires checking conditions constantly, it sounds like.
Absolutely vital. The south and west entrances via Highway 62 are open year-round. The north entrance via Highway 138 is closed seasonally, usually from November until May or June, depending heavily on the snowpack that year. Always check the official sources like nps.gov Trial and Ole or OregonStripCheck.com for the latest road status before heading out. Spring opening is always gradual and dependent on conditions. Don't assume Rim Drive will be open just because it's June.
Practical tip: there's no gas available inside the park in winter, and the seasonal station at Mazama Village closes earlier in the fall.
Plan your fuel accordingly. Also, expect very limited cell service throughout most of the park. Download maps beforehand.
Where can visitors get information once they arrive? Visitor centers.
Yes. The Steele Visitor Center at park headquarters down in Munson Valley is open year-round, except for Christmas Day. It has winter hours, usually 1084p, and summer hours, 95p, and was recently renovated. The RIM Visitor Center, located in the historic Kaiser Studio right at RIM Village, is seasonal, typically open from late spring, early summer through the fall, 9.3 UA 5p. Both are great resources for maps, permits, and ranger program schedules.
There are entrance fees for the park, right?
Yes, entrance fees are charged, valid for 7 days. They vary by season and vehicle type, typically $30 per vehicle in summer, $20 in winter, and $15 per person entering on foot or bike. An annual Crater Lake Pass is $55, and all of the national park passes, like the America the Beautiful Pass, are accepted. And importantly, the park is a cashless facility, so be prepared to pay any fees with a credit or debit card.
Accommodation inside the park is quite limited and requires advanced planning, especially in summer.
Very limited. Mazama Campground offers tent and RV sites near the south entrance. It's seasonal, typically open early July through late September. Reservations are highly recommended, often essential. Its 2025 season dates are July 1st to September 2, for example. Lost Creek Campground is a small, tent-only campground, first come, first served and seasonal, but note it will be closed for the entire 2025 season.
And the historic Crater Lake Lodge, right on the rim, that offers stunning views and dining, but is also seasonal.
Yes, and it requires reservations booked very far in advance, often a year or more out. It's very popular. Cabins at Mazama Village are another seasonal lodging option near the campground. For those seeking more solitude, backcountry camping is permitted with the required permits and adherence to specific regulations. Check the park website for details on that.
Given the seasonal access, the popularity, and especially that major Cleetwood Cove closure starting in 2026, planning really is paramount for a successful visit, isn't it?
Checking the official NPS website, nps.gov/Arley, for the most current information on conditions, road, and trail closures, especially Cleetwood Cove.
Yeah.
Facility operating hours and reservation requirements is the single most important step before you go. Don't rely on old information.
So we've taken a deep dive into Crater Lake National Park. We've journeyed from the cataclysmic birth of Mount Mazama to the unique science of the blue water and the fragile life it holds.
We've explored the deep human connections to the land, from ancient legends mirroring geology to the tireless fight for its preservation by people like William Steele. And we looked at the many ways to experience its beauty, from the famous rim views to hidden gems like Blakeney Falls or the Pinnacles.
And we've discussed the ongoing challenges and future plans, including that significant, though temporary, closure of lake access via the Cleetwood Cove Trail from 2026 through 2028. That's a big one to remember.
Understanding these layers, the fire, the water, the time, the life, and the human story, it really makes standing on that rim so much richer, doesn't it? It's not just a pretty lake. It's a dynamic place with a profound history and ongoing challenges.
What insight from this deep dive stuck with you the most? How does knowing its story change how you might experience its beauty, whether you visit this year or plan for after the major projects are complete?
For me, I think it's the powerful narrative of resilience against all odds.
Resilience, how so?
Yeah. Crater Lake is a place born from immense destruction, right? Yet life not only returned, but adapted and thrived in these unique and unexpected ways. But it also holds a tiny, vulnerable species like the Mazama newt, right on the very edge of existence, facing new, human-caused challenges. It makes you think, as stewards of this place, how can we ensure that story of resilience continues? How do we protect the lake and its fragile inhabitants, not just for the next few years during necessary repairs, but for all the changing times ahead?